Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is another round of the Freedom Under Natural Law Conference interview series for Funnel 5, premiering February 21st and 22nd of 2026. And it's my pleasure and honor to bring on Tyler Bloyer, which is going to be a presenter for the conference. I've been a big fan of your work for a while. And before we kind of get into your topic and what's that going to be about, can you do a little brief introduction for the people that might not be familiar with your work?
Absolutely. Thank you, Will, and thanks to you and the organizers for doing the conference again the fifth time, correct? This time around.
That's
So
right.
that's an amazing amount of work you guys have put into the previous conferences. So I'm looking forward to being a part of this one.
Excellent.
And yeah, a lot of people probably wouldn't be familiar with my work, this being my first time attending or presenting at this conference. So again, I thank you for the opportunity to do that. It's been quite a while now, building up the steam. I always feel like I'm still just getting started, even though I've been creating content like this, like we'll be presenting here, for over a decade now, about a decade, seriously getting into it. And since that time, I realized the importance of the psychological component of the mental slavery that we're dealing with in our world. And that's really been the focus. And not only in my work or in things that I'm trying to put forward, but as I've gone on, I've realized how much more that means reflecting back at myself, looking more also at my own problem with mental slavery or ways of thinking in a scarcity mentality or other things that I've come up against in my own psychology, right? So a lot of the time we're talking more abstractly about what might be happening out there or analyzing society and civilization. And I think even the presenters doing a good job at doing that, they're good at it because they see these things in themselves. And when you can really see that you have just as big of a potential in yourself, if not even the way that you're currently being in the world, that contributes to the problem that we're all trying to solve, or the problem of human slavery and the solutions to getting there. I've discovered that it's not so much just about providing the solutions or coming up with the right facts or having the truth, so to say. It's more so about a whole other set of things that aren't so much even dealt with in our own movement or in the truth movement. And so my work has shifted over the years to become more about dealing with one of the components of what this future presentation will be on, and we'll touch on that more. But is this what I like to call the creature of control, and fleshing out what is this creature of control really? And is it just the hidden hand manipulating everything and we're all just under the control of these outside forces? No, and what I've discovered is that it's actually much more of an internal psychology, an internal force that we're dealing with that manifests itself in the world in various ways, and has different roots to it than exactly just saying, oh, it's this thing happening to us, this phenomenon that's occurring in the world that occurs to all of us and we're all just under control, or something like that. It's much more of an internal struggle, I've found, and that freedom becomes essentially a state of mind and a psychological attitude towards the world and the way it is, especially in the world where freedom isn't exactly the bottom line rule that we're all living under, right? It's not as simple as that, and it's not necessarily the case that we live in a free world. We live in a world built by psychological malfeasance and a discontent to reality, and lack of responsibility and wanting freedom. So yeah, so over the years, I've studied and even been really critical of this movement, of the truth movement, and I think that that's also healthy, a healthy analysis to help try to move us all forward past certain pitfalls and things. So I've done a series and will continue to work on the movement traps and falling into movement traps. Now, having gone down the road quite a ways in various aspects and various rabbit holes, I've found a few pitfalls and found things that I think can be helpful to help others avoid along the way on their journey. Not so much to just say, here's what you have to know and here's what you have to do, but more like, hey, we've been over here. We can mark off this territory here. This doesn't make sense. This is not uh, a cohesive worldview, and pick those things apart and put it out there. I think that that's helpful, and I think that it can help others that are coming behind us. As time kind of moves so swiftly, it seems like now suddenly we're looking back and watching a whole younger audience and younger crowd come in, uh, to exploring these concepts and topics. So hopefully, through the work that I've done on the website and I'll continue to do, there's been somewhat of a breadcrumb trail left and some helpful things. And like I said, though, at the same time, I feel like I'm really just kind of scratching the surface and dipping my toe in and just getting started in a lot of the things I've said and put out there.
Yeah, fantastic. And one thing I kind of thought of as you were talking about your work, right? A decade. I mean, you're so versatile as well, right? I mean, presentation, docu-series, a bunch of different series on different aspects, like you said. Help out with like the Seed Conference and co-host for Richard Grove and autonomy and all this kind of stuff. You carry you cast a wide net, and that's something that I admire for having skill sets. And I try to aspire to having that versatility as much as possible. But one thing that I like that you said, that reminded me of just the funnel conference in general. Sure, it's freedom under natural law. We're talking about an objective truth, and yet we like to bring in many different types of presenters from all array spectrum of topics and categories that someone might specialize in. But that's the whole point, is to show, like, look, we can even have contrary ideas. We're still under that banner of objective truth, freedom under natural law. So that's a huge, huge umbrella. And having the healthy back and forths, the constructive criticisms, different takes on different concepts or events, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's kind of a staple of what the funnel conference is and kind of how we wanted to set it up. So that's fantastic, which leads me to my next question of what is your presentation and what's the topic going to be about? If you can give us a little teaser.
Absolutely. And I agree that it's good to have multiple aspects looking at this thing. Uh, I think we need a lot more of that. People picking up this thing and moving it around, that, you know, the different aspects of the whole thing that we're looking at. It's not so much one person's perspective or one person's solution is going to solve the problem. And so, having a multifaceted audience and people presenting is really important. So, good job on you guys for keeping it diverse. And um, asking me to come on is proving that, because I've been very critical of some of the things, a lot of the a lot of the solutions that are put forward in the freedom movement, or even the problems that are agreed upon that are just sort of set in stone. I've picked those things apart, and I know that that can be like, to some, you're like talking about their thing, and you're saying, they've put a lot of effort into this idea, into this solution, or to this problem, and then someone comes along. And so I've tried to be respectful and do it in a way that is thorough and not just throwing stones. And also, like I said, it's coming from a place of actually wanting to help. Okay, let's move this thing along. Okay, I see you guys are, spinning out over here. Let's push this thing forward and upgrade our rhetoric, right? Move past some of the stuff that I feel like is making us look adolescent and somewhat immature in the so-called movement. And then, realizing that being in a movement or a group or a label or a crowd is just sort of another flavor of crowd psychology in all of us. And whether we're claiming to be awake to all these things or not, I've realized that the group in general is typically a bad idea. Labels in general are typically something I like to avoid. But it's to answer your question, though, The presentation's not going to really go into that. It's more about explaining the solution that, the conference is about, freedom under natural law. And so I have a critique of society in general that I'm going to put forward. And it does have to do with the creature of control. So this series that I've done, that I've mentioned, called The Creature of Control, is something that I've thought about this episode being a part of that for a long time, that I was going to add. And then when you asked me to come on, it's sort of just naturally this topic that I had canned and been thinking about for a few years now. Was like, okay, the obvious pick that I'm gonna choose there. So, and a lot of it is going to be centered around technology's modern uh, advancements, and how we're in this technological upheaval, this revolution that we're in, this absolute explosion of technology, and how I feel like that's kind of caught us at the wrong time in a way. We're a bit behind on on the philosophy. We're a bit behind on the worldview, on the cohesive, holistic worldview that makes sense. And here we are, you know, almost like a adolescent who's not quite ready, but they're going to be forced into the world anyway. And whether ready or not, here we go. I mean, so the pedal's going to be put to the metal, and I feel like there's there's some big glaring flaws that we need to address before we really push on the accelerator here. Let alone all the various issues that are going to come up with this pressure of this technological explosion. And I think that the way that people see the world, depending or not, they may frame what I'm saying as somewhat overly critical. And hey, what are you complaining about? Or seeing it as someone sort of in this state of mind nowadays, how a lot of younger people are, complaining and saying how hard it is and how difficult things are. And there's a section I have prepared out to touch on that specifically, with what I think that is, what these younger people are actually saying, with what they're getting at, saying things are so much more difficult now, or financially they seem to be focused on how difficult things are financially in this world. And I do think that that's a symptom of kind of what I'm hitting on, is that it's not so much that's true, is it's just harder than it was when grandpa bought a house or whatever. But these are the early signs, kind of like the canary in the coal mine of the bigger problem of what I'm going to be hitting on in the presentation. So obviously, I don't want to like give my whole thesis away here, but yeah, that's one aspect, and just this unprecedented technological explosion that we're all dealing with, and again, that lack of preparedness in the philosophical world, and the way that that's going to sort of collide and mix together moving forward. And just that progress for progress's sake isn't necessarily a good thing. To put it, that's sort of a nutshell of what I'll be discussing. But um, yeah, that's the highlight of the beginning of it.
I love it. That's right up my alley. In my own work, I talk about the two overarching aspects of change. Obviously, the internal and the external, but philosophy being the internal and technology being the external. And just going off of what you just said right there, my wheels are turning, because I absolutely think that the social engineers, they want to keep pushing this you know this high technology to the kids being humanity as spiritual infants and not ready to work the big guns. And there's so much influence that, yeah, absolutely, humanity, even I will say, is not ready for a lot of this technology that is coming out. And again, technology being a tool, and how is it going to be used? These are huge questions, and philosophical questions as well. So I'm really looking forward to how you kind of frame that and dive deeper into it. So, and extremely relevant right now.
Oh yeah, and there's another concept, future shock. That's Alvin Toffler. It's like a book from the 70s. This concept of the future just sort of being overwhelming with this boom of technology, right? and that most people just can't handle it. All the change, the rapid amount of change is discussed in the book. And it's more or less, I think if you look around with a critical eye, it's definitely true. But then it's also creating this basically like a surrogate womb for people to, again, replace reality with this distraction essentially. And so, not wanting to deal with all the change while at the same time the change is facilitating further regression into adolescence. Like you said, like the children are handed, the technology and they're just not prepared really on how to handle it. And I'm not trying to call like, be offensive to people that are, embracing the technology, so to say. It's more or less just making sure we're tapping the brakes and looking at this critically as we advance so quickly, because I really don't think that's being done from on high. There's not this careful planned out thinking with the release of some of these things. It's sort of being done almost like a child in a sandbox, just throwing their toys around in a way and seeing how things fall. But in this case, there's real consequences for how things are going to unfold with this. And in a lot of ways, it's terrifying. In a lot of ways, I always say how exciting it is too to be alive right now and to be able to participate. But are we going to use the tools in a way that's going to promote freedom, truth, prosperity, love, joy? It seems like it, the negative side of me that I think is actually in this case more accurate. And it's not just about being negative, but it's like the problem is what I want to what we see manifesting is a world where we're only going to be made more childish and more childlike and less able to actually even use the technology in a way that it could be prosperous for us. And so I think we're sort of getting caught into a whirlpool situation that we can't escape. And you know, you
Yes.
you could say that I'm wrong and that that's not the case, but I think that time's also going to tell. And I don't think my one presentation is going to turn around and change the world for the better and everybody's going to suddenly get it. But unfortunately, what I've called the secondary matrix in my work is like you can unplug yourself to a certain degree. You can get out of this to a certain degree, but then you're sort of just stuck in this secondary matrix, being that we are here and we are in this reality, and there's kind of only so many ways out of it, and if you're along for the ride, then yeah, then that's what I call being in the secondary matrix. Like you still have to observe what is occurring, even if you've somewhat unplugged yourself out of it, which I still think is a good thing to do, and you should try to detach, from the negativity even of it all, and that's all possible. Like I was saying, freedom's more of a state of mind and an attitudinal thing. So there's certain things that like once we understand them, and I think that's where natural law can come in, is like once you sort of understand what's happening and why we're getting what we're getting because of what we're putting in as a collective whole, it is concerning, but at the same time, because it's understandable and logical and like makes sense, it's also somewhat of a relief just to know that we're going to get what we're going to get. We're going to get what we deserve one way or the other. And so if it's negative and it's a bad consequence, that's exactly what we put in there. You're going to get what you put in, especially collectively. So
That's right.
in a lot of ways, it's not as concerning as maybe it sounds, or some of the presentations that might be a little bit more dire, or some of the presenters and their approach. But uh, anyway, yeah, I think with natural law being the solution, in a lot of ways, that's a relief to know that things are unfolding the way they are for a reason. It's not just random chaos.
Exactly. That question that might drive someone, frustrated in understanding the why something is happening, whether that's individual or in the world. The knowledge of natural law answers that, totally removes that. And then, then it's left with the how and how does one even activate which is kind of the main tenet of the funnel conference, is to inspire others to take action. So this is why someone like yourself presenting this type of topic, it might be the information, it might be that presentation that has someone click with the information to give them clarity in their perception, where by then they want to take action in some form or fashion. So I think that's going to be a hard hitting topic. I'm excited to see that. And you mentioned the series that you're currently doing. I have your, maybe you could talk about your website and where you would recommend people go to kind of check out some of your work, or what series. Um, let's see. The Creature of Control, is that what you were saying? That's your active series right now?
Yeah, so I was just actually talking about this on a walk I was on right before this. Is I've basically put down, kind of like a musician may do, a body of work that I can now go back and kind of highlight each topic the way that I really want to. I've laid down a good foundation, and I don't really need to pave a lot of new ground. And what I need to do, and what I'm going to be working on, is just going back and adding in more puzzle pieces to each thing I've touched on. So the creature of control is where I got started. That's an ongoing analysis of the human condition, you could say. And that topic, I mean, who, you can't exhaust that topic, right? So um, I framed it in a way that I think is more interesting, in talking about it from the creature perspective. And I'll give away the ending there. The creature isn't, like I said, it's not some hidden hand Illuminati, the elite figures ruling the world. That's part of it. But out of that twofold root, it's more about the other part, that the creature is the people that are creating that world with, the way that they're being in the world. And so that's one topic, but the Bio-PsyWar, that's an ongoing topic as well. I mean, so when COVID came out, that was basically my response to that whole thing, and wanting to expose the biopsychological warfare. So it's not only physical, but it's also very psychological. So we're in a physical war here in this world, an ongoing physical war, but it's also a psychological war. It's not so much just like boots to the face,
Mm-hmm.
big brother coming to, throw you in the cart for posting the wrong Facebook thing. That's happening too. But again, like we were discussing with the creature and with my presentation that we'll be doing for Funnel, is this much more of a psychological war that we're in. So the Bio-Psy war is another thing that I'll go back and touch on, and I feel like needs to be updated and highlighted. I tried to cover the ground of answering the question from the people that were on the side of like, well, they wouldn't do that. When we're like, the whole COVID thing is going down, and there was like this obvious, this is them, carrying out their plan stuff happening. And but then you had like the people that just want to completely stay asleep, like, they would never do something like that. And so a lot of that series, I was just breaking down like, here's exactly why, it's obvious that they would, and they have, and they do things like this all the time, carry out
Yeah.
these types of operations. So
That
so
was
yeah.
the first piece of work that how I was introduced to you, was the Bio-PsyWar.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Um, it's good to have all of those puzzle pieces, right? The effects that are happening, the current events, the why for certain, XY category. But like you said, and I hear this a lot, there's so much fixation on the hidden hand or the social engineers. Like, who are they? And sure, that's, going down the bloodline path. I mean, that can be useful, but that's not the actual, you could say, enemy. It's resides in the populace, right? It's psychological. It's these false axiom beliefs that are supporting and condoning the system itself, the order following, etc.
Yeah, and that's really the falling into the movement traps. Just down a little bit there, you'll see the slide on that one. That's kind of what that goes into. Is like, we could talk all day about the Federal Reserve and they're doing this, and what's happening on the outside, but that's really just another technique of avoiding the real issue. And a lot of these types that go down that path, it's another political movement, so to say, to basically distract from doing that inner work, from doing that shadow work, from looking inside and really seeing, how have I contribute, how have I been duped, and how have I bought into the lie, and what have I done to contribute to that. Not so much looking outside, but that the series here is pointing out, the movement trap series is more, again, like I touched on a little bit, is all the different pitfalls of that people go into and waste years, if not their whole lifetime, framing things and looking at things from this way and perpetuating that downstream. So it becomes an issue for me, because then you have younger people coming in, and it's like, you've got to look at the Federal Reserve, and then you look at G. Edward Griffin, and then you look at these things, and then you'll be free. It's almost like people think that there's this direct breadcrumb trail that people can take by studying the evil forces that's going to lead to freedom. And a lot of it's really just avoiding the problem, and, you know, selling products and courses and various things. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. I've also been critical of that aspect in our movement, that there are charlatans and snakes in the long grass. What I don't mean to say there is that there's something wrong with commerce or something wrong with someone needing to make a living. There's obviously nothing wrong with that at all. It's all about the manner in which it's being gone about, right? And
Totally.
the respectability of someone, and like the way that they are. Sometimes they're doing it in a way that is hurtful to the freedom and truth community, because they're charlatans, and then once that's discovered and this person is seen for who they really are, it kind of makes anybody affiliated with that person, a little bit of dirt on their face or whatever. So I've been careful as well to, I'm a little bit of a lone wolf, I'll just put it that way. And I'm okay with the long haul on this journey. Like, I'm not trying to get something done this year. Will, you and I are going to finish this job. I feel like we're both in it for the long haul. I'm definitely in it for the long haul. And as I said, there's a lot more that I want to do with my work. I feel like I've just scratched the surface. I feel like I've done a good job at laying down a good platter, an array. And I feel like now for me, it's set up to go and just continue pushing that work out, with not so much emphasis on having an immediate result. At least that's my long-term plan. Because if I feel that way, and then we don't see any, evidence of things changing, but they're actually getting worse, that can be pretty disheartening for someone, trying to do this kind of work. Is if you're caught up on the result that we're going to change the world, right? Because there's a good chance, with the way things are and the way people are in this world, that it may just continue to go on, right? But I'm not here to see an immediate result, and I'm not here to just sell a course or something. So I'm patient and have, time, hopefully, to continue to work on things.
I love that state of mind and that outlook, man, a lot. And I can definitely resonate with that. I remember when I kind of decided to go public, that was kind of my sentiment. It was, this is going to be a lifelong process. There's lots to talk about. There's lots to unpack. And I think expectations, they kind of silence a lot of people that start going public and start creating content, but due to those expectations of having a series get a lot of attention or seeing a certain type of results, takes the wind out of their sails. Truth is truth. It's always going to be there. And hundreds and thousands of years of the human condition of slavery and control, it could take us, that long, or, hopefully less, to get out of it. But the point is creating that message, working on the craft, and I call it soul craft, right? Because, we do this work, at least I'm speaking for myself, I'm sure you would agree, because it's the right thing to do. And we have the ability to have this technology to kind of, in a way, immortalize the message, or at least when our lifetime is up and we transmigrate, the future generations can see our work potentially, and it could still have that influence of, creating change or giving someone insight. So yeah, man, I really like that. Your website is in depth. There's tons of work to go through, and I highly recommend the viewers to get familiar with your work. Go through there, check it out, and to kind of get ready for the funnel conference and for your presentation. So, any last words that you would like to say, and we'll wrap it up.
No, just I look forward to it. I feel like, we're just scratching the surface here as well. We're going to get it more into it in the presentation and in the various presentations being provided, as well as I look forward to working with you, Will, in the future and doing more. So, no, like, well, obviously this interview here we're not meant to go way in depth, and but we can do that at other places at other times in the future. So yeah, appreciate you for doing this with me, Will, and for organizing the conference. You and the folks that are doing that. It's a huge effort, a huge amount of pain in the butt, but like you said, if you're coming in it for the right reasons, you can get past a lot of that. And I appreciate you for doing that, because I know, like you said, having been a part of some of these things in at least an ancillary way, if not some of the engine, it wasn't ever me taking the whole thing on. And I know that it's a very difficult task. And I just want to say appreciate you and thank you for doing that.
Thanks, brother. That means a lot. I appreciate you and all your efforts, and I'm excited for the funnel conference for your presentation. So thanks for joining me today. And for the viewers, remember February 21st and 22nd is the Freedom Under Natural Law Conference. The title of this is Ignite. Ignite Hearts and Minds. We hope to see you there. This is a free 2-day virtual conference. You can go to Freedom Under Natural Law, and all the presenters are there with their links to get to their website and their content as well. So go there, check it out, and subscribe to the newsletter so you can get updates. And we will see you on the 21st of February, 2026.